Hi everyone. So you're watching this video because you are ready to collect some bacteria. Now before you can, however, there's a couple of important steps that are involved for your safety and for the safety of your results. So we're going to go through these directions together and I'm going to read them to you as well as also pausing and giving you some more details. You are going to be required to do all of these steps along with the video. So as soon as I tell you to do something, you're going to need to pause the video and then do that step and then continue. So just making sure that you're following along, and everything is really important for you to do. None of it is optional. So please make sure that you are listening and watching this video closely. And if there's anything that you've missed, feel free to rewind. In order for you to get your materials or be able to get to your locations, because you'll be having your materials during this video, but in order for you to get to those locations, you will need to have all of your materials checked by me before you're allowed to leave the classroom. So let's go ahead and get started. So the directions for collecting bacteria. These are general investigations or general directions for your investigations. So in order to kind of make sure that you are doing and following directions that are specific to your question or what you're investigating, you may want to add or do or put in different order some of these directions. But for the most part, it should go like this. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to follow my instructions regarding the wearing of proper safety items. So for example, what we're going to do is you're going to wash your hands with soap and water. So pause this video, go wash your hands with soap and water. And then after you do that, you're going to get some gloves. And there'll be some boxes of gloves over by me because you have to watch the video in order to know where they are. And I'll know if you're paying attention. So after you wash your hands with soap and water or the sanitizer, there is sanitizer in the front of the room, you're going to put on gloves, right? Because we're going to be swabbing some bacteria. We want to protect ourselves. So you'll be wearing some gloves, and I'm just going to take them off for the sake of the video. But you'll keep them on as you go to get your swab. So you're going to make sure that your lab station is free of clutter. So that's going to be taking off all of your, removing things off of your table, putting your backpacks under the seats. You're not going to want anything but your computer in front of you for this. And then you're going to get your 2 Petri dishes. So remember that each person is going to have their own. So in a group, so if you have a group of 2, you'll have 2 in your group. If you have a group of 3, you'll have 3. So 1 per person. And you're going to label them according to your teacher's instructions. So this is actually one of the most important parts to be following, because if you make a mistake, it's going to make it very difficult in regards to putting your lid on. And so what you're going to do is you're going to grab a permanent marker. Remember, the permanent markers are in the top blue drawer in the front of the room. And in your Petri dish, you are going to take the back of your Petri dish. So we have this plate. Do not open your Petri dish, right? I'm opening it just to show you that you should be having yours closed. And that's really for contamination. So we know that there are things that float into the air, especially I'm not wearing my mask. So there are things that from my body, that my breath that could get on it. So we really want to make sure that we're having the lid closed. The only time you should be opening your lid is when you're about to put in some of the swabs. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But the most important thing is to really be sure that you are taking the back, okay? So you want the back. So if you were to see that the lid is going to be the one that's slightly larger, on the back, again, I'm going to say it again, on the back of your Petri dish, you're going to take your permanent marker. You can use a ruler if you prefer, but I'm going to go ahead and draw a quadrant. So I'm just going to draw I'm going to draw 4 quadrants, like a plus sign across, right? So we've got our 4 quadrants. And then this is how I want you to label them. In the bottom right, you're going to label it with a C, and that stands for control, meaning we're not swabbing that area at all, okay? So C for control. Then the bottom left quadrant, you're going to put a T, because we're going to put our thumbprints in there, and I'll get to that in a second, but this is just the setup. So you're going to put a T in this quadrant. Then in this quadrant up here, we're going to put an L1 for location 1, because remember that you are identifying 2 different locations, but this location 1 is going to be where you think there is the most bacteria. Okay, so you're going to put L1 most, meaning location 1 that you're testing where you think there's going to be the most bacteria, and location 2 where there is the least. So then you're going to mark the last quadrant, location 2, where you think there's going to be the least. Now, in the camera, it looks backwards, but it's actually right side. It's the right way. So this is what your Petri dish is going to look like. At this point, I want you to hit pause, and I want you to have and bring it to me and show me that you have it this way. Because if you accidentally put it on the lid, then we'll need to fix that, because if you can tell, if you put it on the lid, what's the problem here? It moves. So if your quadrants is where you're going to be looking for that data and that information, but your lid moves, well, then now we don't really know what that data is telling us. So that's really important that you do it on the back. So pause the video, show it to me before you move on to the next step, okay? If you've had a chance to show it to me and everything looks right and I've given you the swabs, now you have the swab, okay? And you're going to be getting 2 per person, okay? So you'll get 2 swabs per person. So now we are at step 4. So gather 3 pre-sterilized cotton swabs, that's these guys, and leave them in their packages. You'll be using 2 of those swabs. Label the packages with the location of your 2 collection sites. The third one will only be used if you contaminate one of the others. So we're going to do that a little differently. You are going to want to keep them sealed, because that's what's going to keep it from getting contaminated. So remember that when something is contaminated, it means that other stuff got on it. So now we don't know if the results are due to one thing or a bunch of things, right? So we really want to make sure that we keep them in their packages. Now, when you go and do the swabs, you're going to go to the locations that you've chosen. Remember, you're choosing one location with the most, or each one of you are going to choose a location where you think it's the most. I highly encourage you in your group to have different locations for each test. So if there are 3 people in a group, I would choose 3 different locations where you think you're going to have the most and put it on 1 dish per place, right? So for example, if I am with Jennifer, right? If I'm with Jennifer, then I would have in my location where I think there's going to be the most bacteria in on the table, and then maybe Jennifer's most location is going to then be the door handle, right? So really making sure that we are having different samples of locations, which is going to make our data richer, right? And then the same thing is true with the least, okay? But when you go to your site, for example, and this is something that nobody has brought up, so I'm going to do this because I'm really curious. But I'm really curious as to see if my phone has a lot of bacteria on it. So I'm going to take my swab. So when it's time for you to swab, you're going to want to open up your swabs here. You're going to want to take it out. Don't throw this away or crinkle it, because you'll need it. Then you're going to go to your surface that you're going to test, and then you're going to really rub on the surface. You really want to make sure that you're rubbing the surface, making sure that you're turning and twisting the swab, because you really want to make sure it gets all covered, and you want to get that area really, really good, okay? So I'm covering my cell phone, and now I think that's a location where it's going to be the most. So on my Petri dish, the way that you're going to do this, but just so you know, you're not going to have the Petri dish with you when you're walking. So when you're done swabbing, you'll actually just put it right back into the sleeve and carry it back to class this way. Okay, same thing is true for your least. So if this is my most, maybe I think the least amount of bacteria lives on my, let's see, I think the least amount of bacteria lives on the projector, and the glass lens of where the thing gets projected out of. So I'm going to do that. And I mean, there's a lot of dust, but let's see if that plays a role. So then I'm going to do the least, right? So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that in the packaging. So once you've swabbed your locations, you're going to put them in the packaging and you're going to return back to class, okay? So now if we are collect or two samples according to your plan and your teacher's directions, be sure to return each swab to the correct package according to your labels. So that's exactly what I just did, right? Return to your lab station. Be sure you are wearing the proper safety items according to your teacher's direction. Wash your hands as often as your teacher directs you to do so. So you should be wearing your gloves throughout the entire process. You could have waited to put them on after the plates, okay? But when you're going to swab, you're going to already be wearing your gloves, and then you could always wash your hands and get a new pair if you would feel more comfortable doing that. Okay, so then it says wash your hands as often as you do. If one of your cotton swabs becomes contaminated while you're collecting your samples, be sure to place it swab down, side down in the 10% bleach solution as directed by your teacher. Because this is a pretty low risk lab, relatively, we're just going to go ahead and put it in the garbage and put it in the sleeve in the garbage. It will be fine. Swab the surface of the agar in both Petri dishes. Be sure to open the lid at 450 angle or 45-degree angle and quickly swab the surface of the agar in a zigzag pattern as demonstrated. So that's going to look like. So the swab that I took for the most, okay, we're going to take that swab, get ready, and when you're going to have more than one person, so it's definitely going to be easier than it is for me right now. But when your partner, one of you is going to hold the Petri dish open 45 degrees, and one of you is going to take the swab and swab it. So remember, this was my phone surface. This is the most where I think it's going to be. I'm going to go ahead and take it out. And then when they ask for it to be 45 degrees, it literally means open the lid just slightly enough. And then you're going to put it in a zigzag pattern across where you think the most amount of bacteria is going to be. You really want to focus it in the center, because if you put it too much close to the edges, it can possibly bleed into the other quadrant, and we really want to make sure that it doesn't have, that we can tell the difference, okay? So I just swab that in this area only. So I'm going to do that again, but this time with my least amount of bacteria, which was the glass that covers the light bulb of the presentation, or the projector. God, I can't think of that word. So then I'm going to take that swab again. I'm going to go ahead and open this 45 degrees, and I'm going to put it in a zigzag motion. Okay. Really twirling. Remember that we really spent time twirling our swab stick. So you're going to do the same thing on here, because we really want to get that transfer to be done well. Then you're going to close that lid. Then you're going to want to put the swab back into the cover, and then you'll dispose of those in the garbage. Now, when it comes to the agar, the reason that we hold it at 45 degrees is to, again, limit that contact, that contamination of particles in the air, or even, you are going to be wearing your mask, so you don't have to worry too much about your breath. But in non-pandemic times, I would have been telling people to not breathe on it either, because we know that we can transmit bacteria and viruses. So if your cotton swab become contaminated, we already went through that. I already demonstrated, close the lid, but we're not done just yet. So then we talked about how there's this control. So the control means that it is our baseline, so we're not going to put anything in that quadrant. But the T is actually that question about whether or not bacteria already exist in our skin. So we are going to open it 45 degrees, and you, on your own personal plate, are going to just put your thumbprint on it. So just like what I just did, and then you're going to put your thumbprint on it. So for this one, you might want to take your gloves off and just put your thumbprint on it. Now, when you're done with that, okay, you're going to throw away your cotton swabs, and you're going to go ahead and we're going to use something called parafilm. Now, this is like probably some of my favorite like sciencey bio stuff. So if you want me to put it on for you, that's totally fine because I really enjoy it. But you may also like this too. So with your own Petri dish, you're going to take your parafilm. You're going to peel this like kind of plastic, like thin tissue paper like substance off. So you're going to be left with this kind of plastic. Now, the cool thing about this is that this stretches. So what you're going to do with your Petri dish is that to close it off, to make sure that it doesn't get contaminated, you're going to put the film on one side, and then you are going to stretch it until it goes completely around your entire Petri dish. Now, I would recommend to pull slowly. You don't need to go fast with this because otherwise it will rip. But once you do, then you can go ahead and kind of push it down, and that will create a seal for your Petri dish. And this should not be opened again. Okay, so then the last thing that you'll need to do is you will need to put your initials. So, and the period that you're in. So once you're got it all wrapped up, then you would write your initials. I'm going to write Miss F. Okay. And then not only are you going to write Miss F, you're also going to write period, whatever period you are in. So I'll just say period 2, even though I'm technically in 3 and 4, right? So then that's what that's going to look like. And then the last thing you're going to do is there will be some like a tray set up. There will be some trays set up in the back of the room where you're then going to put this onto the tray, and that is how you're going to collect bacteria. And then I'm going to pop it into something called an incubator, which is a type of like a box you may have seen in the back of my room that is set to a specific degree because we talked about temperature as about part of why bacteria can be alive. So again, feel free before, throughout the steps, make sure that you're pausing, you're checking in with me. You'll need to pause and check in with me about your labeling in order to get your swab, and then making sure that you are coming to me if you have any questions. To dispose, like I said, you're just going to put it back in the wrapper and you'll just go ahead and throw it in the garbage. It will be okay. All right. Anyways, have fun. Happy collecting.